Friday, so when I was doing my program on Friday, the new Minister of Health, Simeon Brown, went down to Dunedin in person, accompanied by various health officials, and gave that particular city the news that they had been waiting for. It wasn't necessarily the news that they wanted, or was it? But it was news that they had been waiting for. One of the issues, perhaps the only time that we have seen in the entire time, and you can actually put it into context, when 35 or 30,000 Dunedin folk marched on a particular Saturday, of different political stripes, it has to be said. They weren't all Labour Greens or Te Pāti Māori. There are a number of National Party, ACT Party supporters amongst New Zealand First Party supporters amongst those particular mills. And it was to do with the fact that they had been dicked around for so long, the people of Dunedin, over their new hospital. Now, on this show, we've had before a former Minister of Health, Pete Hodgson, Labour Minister of Health. And the question I always asked Pete was, mate, I was there at Otago University when they built you a new hospital. How come you need another one? I mean, they're meant to last more than 50 years, for Pete's sake. No, it wasn't even 50 years. And Pete Hodgson said, oh, well, it was all to do with neglect and negligence, basically. And the reason that you need a new one now is because the other one is just falling apart, literally, because it wasn't looked after. And he was quite clear and adamant about that. Okay, that might be the past. What is the present and the future? Well, the people of Dunedin marched. The Minister of Local Government went, previous Minister of Local Government, now the Minister of Health, went down to Dunedin. And on Friday, he met the mayors and of the region, and he particularly met the mayor of Dunedin, and he gave the story that a new hospital will be built on the site of the old Cadbury chocolate factory, and it will all get underway. Does this mollify, pacify, happy or please those who are affected? We're joined now by the Mayor of Dunedin, Jules Radich, His Worship, to give us the verdict. Jules, welcome to the show, mate. Is it good news, bad news, or indifferent news that you received on Friday?
I think it's good news. Certainly at this stage of the piece, it is the key decision that needed to be made so that we get the right building on the right site constructed. Because, there's still arguments to be had about the exact mix of services and facilities that are put in there, but you can't put them if you haven't got a structure to put them into.
Yeah, I understand that, but as you know, I live 225 kilometres from you in central Otago. So if you went 225 kilometres from Dunedin north, you'd get to probably Timaru, a bit north of Timaru. So we've been sitting in central sort of slightly bemused by this because we know we get really poor health services out of the Southern District Health Board here. And we're worried that we'll just get even worse services the more money gets ploughed into one facility. Doesn't mean that we'll get the services here in Central. Does that worry you?
The health service is based in three levels. So you've got primary care with your GP. You've got secondary care with your local hospital, and I think you've got a pretty good hospital there at Dunstan. And there's also now a private hospital in Franklin, Queenstown.
Doesn't have A&E, mate.
No,
and we have inadequate
level.
maternity services.
Yep. So that's why you have a tertiary hospital where everything is centralised for severe trauma, and that's the world standard for model of care. So I have discussed this extensively with Martin Keogh, who's the new Chief of Health New Zealand for the South Island, and he categorically states that having a good tertiary hospital with all of the different specialist services available is the worldwide standard for most efficient model of care.
But this is the thing that I also struggle with. You were never not going to have a new hospital. There was promised to you by the last Labour government. The issue was always about cost, wasn't it, and services.
Yes, so, both governments have tried to depreciate this hospital. And I think at the core of the issue is that politicians in Wellington and officials in Wellington they stop realising that it's a southern region tertiary hospital and start thinking about it as a Dunedin hospital and say, well, Dunedin's too small, doesn't need that. But this is the tertiary hospital for the whole lower half of the South Island. You talked about Timaru. Patients from Timaru regularly come to Dunedin.
Really? I would have thought they would have gone north to Christchurch. Okay. No, fair enough. But can I ask this next question, though? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
The southern region, a $1.9 billion cost. Now, that was what was mentioned right to start with. And then the cost, we saw the cost escalation, and it was going to become $3 billion, and we never saw any figures for that. And now Simeon Brown said it is going to cost, this is the budget, $1.9 billion. Now, you know and I know, particularly you as a mayor, that when you start getting involved in building anything, the cost is never the cost. If is the budget, is it your understanding that the 1.9 billion is the maximum amount, and if it's going to cost more than that, you've just got to keep on trimming services and beds?
Look, I have no insight into how the government or the officials will view the budget as they have it, and I would liken it to building a tunnel. So you plan the tunnel, you scope it out, you price it out, and then what do you do about building the tunnel? If you run into unexpected eventualities and it costs more money, do you stop the tunnel at 3/4 of the way through, or do you find more money?
Well, you're going to get an outpatient building, so I think that's right, isn't it? And
Yes.
You're going to get an upgraded A&E facility. That's going to be part of the new hospital. The rest of it, though, you're going to see a reduction in beds across the quantum. From now, when they talk about a reduction in beds from those figures that came out on Friday afternoon, Jules, where did the original bed numbers come from? Was that what the Labour Party was going to deliver?
Well, the various iterations of this hospital have all had different numbers of beds for different purposes.
Right.
So it's been a moving feast the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. It's not as though there was exactly this and exactly that. It's changed regularly. And so one of the things that has happened with this latest iteration of the bed numbers, it's expandable, it's 351, expandable to 404. And your ED spaces is increased from any of the iterations prior to 58. And currently in the hospital, I believe there's only 20-odd ED spaces. So I haven't got an exact number on that. And of course, ED is one of the hold-ups in the hospital. So it seems to me that they're putting in short-stay surgical beds and same-day beds, so 41 of those and 20 short-stay beds. So there's an extra 60 beds there for short stays. So they're looking to, this is just my observation, right? My personal observation. Haven't discussed this with the clinicians yet, and we naturally will be discussing it with the clinicians, but they're moving the model of care to be able to process people more quickly through the hospital. So with a more efficient and a larger ED department, and then short stay beds and short stay surgical beds in which to place them. So hopefully it'll be an end to people waiting in corridors.
The other thing that struck me is how long it's going to take. I think I've seen that the new hospital will be up and running in 2031. Is that your understanding as well?
That's what they said, 2031 at the latest. Right. And it depends on the efficiency of the contractor, because an outpatient building is, looking as though the exterior is practically complete. And I believe it's tracking ahead of time and below budget. But I don't have any figures and exact data on that, but it's certainly looking good. And it's my hope that with efficient contracting, and they certainly have ramped up the supervision of the contracts for this hospital, and the contracts haven't yet been finalised, I believe that they will be able to, get it done before 2030, but I certainly hope so, but who knows?